Welcome to episode 199 of the Necronomicon.com.
On Thursday, the 13th.
James Sabata, Donald Guillory, Bridget D. Brave, and S.A. Bradley are coming to Butcher Cabin Books in Louisville, Kentucky on Thursday, July 13th. Join us for an author reading, Q&As, tickle fests, whatever the hell happens. We don't know. It's going to be a great time. Come on out, buy some books, listen to some great stories, and have a great time with some people who truly love horror. We can't wait to see you at Butcher Cabin Books in Louisville, Kentucky.
So be there.
I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I'm not dumb enough to make a joke here.
I would like to welcome you to the Black Power Hour. I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast that you're listening to, and we're going to have some fun with this one.
Joining us today, for some goddamn unknown reason, Thomas Brungardt's back. Thomas, I'd introduce you, but you've been here 49 times now, so
He's
fuck
moved
anyone
in.
who doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, I just kind of sit around and wait to be on this show. That's all I do.
What people don't know is Thomas has actually been on like 7 more episodes than that, but he just stays quiet in the background while our other guests speak. So, so Thomas, how did you end up on this episode? I tried so hard to keep you away from this episode.
I kept suggesting it, and really, I just wanted to hear Don talk about it, and I was more than happy to, wait for it to come out when you talk to a real guest and you have a real conversation about it. But I'm here for some fucking reason, and I'm gonna be on my best behavior, and we're gonna have a nice conversation about this movie.
I was here for Lake Placid, so I am terrified. But all right, then we'll jump in. So we'll skip all the normal bullshit of who picked this and all that stuff. I think as soon as we saw the trailer, we all went, yeah, we're doing that movie. That looks amazing. So since I'm not going to get to speak again, no, I'm just kidding. I really want to say that I adored the shit out of this. I love horror comedy. So this was just, I'm so excited to see a horror comedy doing well and people going to see it. So
I don't have anything to add on to that one. So
I figured you wouldn't. Yeah.
Well, I have a question right off the top for Don.
Okay.
Don, the premise of this movie is that all of these friends from college are getting together for a Juneteenth party in a cabin in the woods. Have you ever had a Juneteenth party? Because this is a question I had earlier in the week on Juneteenth, thinking, is anybody like actively celebrating this the way you would celebrate like a 4th of July barbecue? And it sounds like, if this movie is accurate, people are doing that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Juneteenth has been celebrated since, I guess, June 19th, 1866. I mean, because you're not going to celebrate. Well, I guess you could consider that first one, but it's Juneteenth festivals, cookouts, concerts, whatever. You've had them since the late 19th century. Phoenix had, which surprising, considering Phoenix's history. They had one that ran for a while, then it stopped, and then it was restarted back in, I think, 71 or the mid 60s. But it is something that people will actually do. Like my mom has talked about going on trips with her sisters, like, oh, we'll go not shopping, but, gambling or to a concert or to a game or something. But I kind of felt like it was a weird setup as far as like, this is why they're meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know what I mean? It just, for me, it seems like if you're going to have, which everybody's going to have their own traditions. Like it would have made more sense to me, like, oh, we're all getting together because Allison is going to get married or going to King's wedding or something, and then it's kind of like, oh, well, let's all hang out as one big group up in this cabin for whatever reason. because my grandfather used to own this land, or something. There could have been a better setup other than, hey, it's Juneteenth and we're gonna have a kickback.
Right.
Yeah.
So then this idea of them going to the woods, does that make sense to you? Like, because I feel like one of the tropes, and there's a lot of tropes in this movie, and that's fine, it's a comedy, but like one of the tropes is that like, oh, they're constantly labeling things, something white people would do. And I feel like going to a cabin in the woods is a white person kind of trip. Am I wrong to think that? Like, it just seems like a weird thing for them to plan for themselves.
If I've not introduced this acronym before, and if I've not said this around James before, as far as this acronym, I'm going to be very surprised and disappointed. There's the acronym, which it is WPS.
White people shit?
White people shit.
Okay.
So there is that understanding, right? And so there becomes that joke about we're going to the cabins, we're doing whatever. But no, there is a community of Black people who go camping, as far as which they even brought up. I think King's character, or maybe his Namdi's character, made that comment about like, oh, this isn't camping, like this is a house. And because a lot more, at least Black people that are involved in the outdoors community, it's almost split. I think I looked at something, it was like 60-40, 55-45, something like that, as far as those who go out camping, fishing, blah, 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 or those who go to like rent somebody's cabin and just hang out in the woods or hang out at that house. But I wouldn't say it's something that's, I guess, a real trope anymore, as far as like you can look at something and say they're not going. I look at it as, you now have this opportunity where you are going to have Black people of different classes, different groups that are going to be going and doing that stuff. In fact, the numbers are at a certain point now, like you can't use that as a trope about, within the movies. It's just that trope has had a lot more life than the past 25, 30 years of more Black people, more African Americans getting involved in outdoor life, hunting, fishing, camping, all that.
Right, I imagine it's like a regional thing too, right? Like things are going to be different where I live in California versus where you're.
Oh yeah, yeah,
right? Like,
yeah. Well, it wouldn't necessarily be camping so much. It would be more like hunting, because to go camping, you need money.
Well, I think you need money to go hunting too, right?
You just need some permission to be on somebody's land. And some, I don't even know if Mississippi has hunting licenses, but even if that would be the biggest expense, because more than likely somebody has a gun, has a shotgun, rifle, whatever they need. It would be a lot less expensive than going out into the mountains, which we don't have that many around. But going into the Appalachian Trail or something like that, that would cost a little bit more money than, hey, I'm going to hunt and either get some food for us or get some food for a group of people. Where there is that.
One of the things about, I wanted to mention that when I saw this movie, I saw it at a movie theater near Oakland, and it was 100% full. Like, it was the most full movie theater I've ever been to.
Wow.
And it was 95% Black people, and it was so much fun. Like, it made me enjoy the movie so much more because everybody around me was having such a great time. And one of the things that I heard somebody kind of say to their friends was that they would never be caught dead in a cabin in the woods. Like, so I just made me think about like, oh, like what kind of trip is this, But
well, I would just add this: not in any woods that you wouldn't be comfortable with. So you have glamping, you have members of the Divine Nine, the Black fraternities, that do plan outdoor activities like this, whether it's camping or even staying at a lake resort. So you're seeing a lot more Black people heading in that direction. And there are even some programs in urban settings. I can't remember what they were called, but like fresh air programs or something, where they take kids that are like at the Y or different community groups, but they take those kids for a day or two up into the mountains, up into nature, so they can actually become comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So I mean, really, in a lot of ways, it's about access. But if you're more rural, you're going to have access to, you know, the guns and hunting. You might be hunting on your own grandfather's land. So it's really just how much was the bullet, as opposed to I'm going to go live outside for a week or a weekend or whatever. And then whatever else you may need to have to protect yourself out in the woods.
Okay, that makes sense. I want to talk about so many different things in this movie, but I feel like I can't talk about the beginning without also talking about the end. So maybe, James, you can steer us in what order we should talk about things that occur in the movie.
Well, I was going to say, Thomas,
I'm going to give that to Don. I want to give that to Don, but first, I just have one quick question, and this is about what you guys were talking about. I took this as it was just an excuse to throw a party. Yeah, it wasn't about Juneteenth. Am I wrong on that, or
no? And you are completely right. And that's why I was saying it seemed weird for it to be like, hey, we're getting together for Juneteenth. But even that gets mentioned a few more times. I just feel like you just want to hang out with your friends. You want to see some people you haven't seen in a while.
Yeah. Like anyone who knows me knows that I don't give a shit about patriotism and nationalism and all that stuff. I love a great 4th of July barbecue. So,
is that a food thing or just fireworks, or?
I'm not a fan of fireworks, but well, the noise of fireworks. But yeah, I felt like that was very much it was just a great excuse to throw this party with your friends and see them again, and maybe a way to keep King's wife with the best nickname ever out of the party. I don't know. Anyway. All right, so Don, you're in control. Where are we going?
All right. I love that this movie was able to have a conversation without having a conversation. And by that, I mean, is the overall theme, or at least one of the themes that stood out to me, was this idea of what exactly is blackness, right? Because throughout the film, even when Morgan and Sean, Jay Farrow and Yvonne Orji's characters, there is that joke about playing this game and the idea of not playing it, but then also coming to the woods, like all these things that you just mentioned, Thomas, about that will somehow get wrapped up in identity, as far as like, I shouldn't do this because I'm black, or that's not something black people would do, or that's white people shit, or whatever type of thing that's there. But what this film does is it starts laying out that idea of what blackness is, and has this competing ideology, as far as you may say that my blackness precludes me from doing whatever, but I'm defining that blackness to mean this. And there's a really good story from, it was either Arsenio Hall or Wayne Brady had talked to Sammy Davis Jr. back in the late 80s or early 90s, but we're having a conversation with him and asking about the ridicule and the mocking and this idea of, like, even him converting to Judaism, that, somehow Sammy Davis Jr. is not black, or he's not black enough. And his response to them was, I define what my blackness is. I define what it means to be me, and culturally what it means to be me. So you have these discussions that are coming up throughout the film that have to deal with identity, and where somebody, asserts themselves on that level, and then also the judgment from somebody else because you might not know this certain song, or you might not like Beyonce, or you might have voted for Trump twice, or anything like that. You can start to make the argument there are things that black people are more likely to do, but in no way should I be rejected culturally, within a community, within a group. There's no way I should be rejected as far as part of my identity as being lesser than yours because I don't do this one thing, or I happen to do this thing. So throughout, I'm looking and just diving into the way this works. Even earlier, Namdi makes a comment to Allison, the biracial character, points at the wall. There's a zebra painting or print on the wall. just trying to already goad each other in some cases, and sometimes goading the audience into kind of look at this stuff where it's about, oh, he's saying that she's mixed, she's black and white, she's neither, she's both, she's nothing, right? And then after that, Clifton, aside from like the gas station scene, didn't work for me because you could have had the same moment where Clifton is pulling up, or she sees Clifton on the road and saying like, yeah, I'm going on my way to, there could have been something else that kind of sped this up, right? Or he just drives up. Who cares? He's going to kill everybody and then leave. But well, anyway. But right after that, when they introduced
Spoilers.
I'm sorry. Yeah, forgot anybody who's listening.
No. As long as we're already doing spoilers, like I feel like this was to establish his accomplice as one person. Like I feel like that's the reason it happened. But I agree that could have happened anywhere at all.
Yeah, but after he walks in, this is the other thing that immediately, like, you've already got Allison's racial identity, her blackness being questioned, right? Clifton walks in, and I think it was Namdi who says, "Hey, Carlton," and he corrects him and says, "Oh, yeah, my name is Clifton." So, "Oh, Clifton, I'm so sorry." The idea that they would go with Carlton because Carlton, within a good amount of the Black community, is seen as another version of an Uncle Tom or Clarence Thomas, some type of person who sees their identity as a different way, or is going to, I guess, somehow try and get you to degrade your identity as well. But anyway, by calling him that when he walks in, Black viewers are going to see it as he's now questioning whether or not he's Black. And even the way that let me pull up his name real quick. Jermaine Fowler. The way in which he plays the Black nerd, because you got all types of cliches and tropes here, but the way he plays a nerd, and specifically a Black nerd, also plays up to the whole idea of, well, you're not really Black because you're going for academics as opposed to athletics, right? So you've got Namdi, who's a personal trainer, right? And a little bit of a man whore. Then you got King, who's this gangster, right? Or at least this former gangster. And then you have Dwayne, right? You have those three men that are expressing Black masculinity. Clifton's character is seen as non-sexual, going away from the grain, not having those physical characteristics, not being strong, not being Black, not being assertive, all these things that are directed towards him. And just by far, they are able to identify how you've already gauged somebody as not being worthy in your community.
Can we talk about the Clifton character for a while? Just 'cause I
Yeah,
feel like there's a lot to unpack with Clifton. He reminded me, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Bowfinger, but like he is like
God
almost
damn it.
identical to Eddie
Yeah.
Murphy's character. Yeah. And it was so distracting to me because I just kept seeing that Eddie Murphy performance in that character. And I love the movie Bowfinger, so it made me like kind of enjoy Clifton for what he was, even though, I mean, it was pretty apparent that he was an outlier in the group. And an unserious question, Don, how much did they pay you for the life rights? Because he was just like you in every single way.
Oh my God.
I'm kidding.
I'm gonna
No.
I don't
We
accidentally get punched.
We got to go into a deep trauma dive right now.
When he
Wait, no, Thomas, I gotta say this.
please.
My first concern when I saw this character, it was two things. That motherfucker's the killer, and then two, holy shit, that was me in high school.
Oh my God.
Like
with the same stroke? Did he have a stroke? Did we ever was it because he was drinking that one night, or did they just never explain why he has like the paralysis on his face?
No, they never go into it.
Yeah,
I'm assuming it was probably from the accident.
it just seems like a weird choice to like make him like that strange, right? Like if you wanted us to believe that he was a part of the friend group, like also like, oh man, there's so much going on with Clifton. I will say one moment that made me feel very alone in the theater is when Clifton mentions that, you know, he's more of a Becker guy, like he likes the show Becker. Like I laughed audibly, and I was the only person who was laughing. That joke was for me.
I really thought that at the end he would switch and like not speak that way, and like that was, you know, they do that all the time with reveals. So I was actually happy that they didn't do that.
Well, that's fair. I mean, I believed immediately that he was probably the killer. I was trying to figure out whether or not he was, like, I was trying to find reasons that he wouldn't be. And then the thing that kept nagging at me is Clifton their way of having a white friend, like introducing a white character into this movie without actually having a white friend.
Holy shit, that would work pretty well.
But then I also
are you saying they don't become friends with Officer White or Ranger White or whatever his name was? Jeez.
They
so
tried
Dietrich
to
Bader
be.
is in this movie as a park ranger, and Dietrich Bader is one of my favorite actors. He's in my favorite
Fucking
movie,
A, man.
He's in Office Space, and he was on the Drew Carey show. He's a great actor. But the thing that I kept thinking about after thinking like, oh, is Clifton supposed to represent a white friend? Is that how funny would the movie be to have a crazy white friend in the group? And it makes me think of, I know that Dave Chappelle is a very divisive comedian, but he used to have this bit, 25 years ago about
it's one of my favorite jokes of his. Yeah, continue.
About a group of black friends always having one white friend in the group, and the white friend is the craziest person in the entire group, and it's the one person you don't want to fuck with. And I thought that would have been a very funny trope to introduce to an already trope-filled movie. That would have been interesting if that's what they were going for with Clifton. Clearly they weren't going for that with Clifton. He was a misfit friend, but I also have a lot of questions about how he still relates to the group 10 years after the last time he saw them.
That joke always resonated with me because when I was in college, 3 of my best friends were black, and they were from the Dominican Republic, and we would go places, and literally the small town Nebraska, right? So every stereotype exists, and people would always watch me when I was with them. And so when I heard that Chappelle joke, I was like, holy shit. So yeah. Anyway. Don, that's my group of friends that ruined Chattanooga for me.
Oh yeah.
All right, continue.
So the friend group, like, how does he from the jump know that they're going to be there? Do we believe that Monica sent him an Evite? Because that sounds it sounded like a bullshit thing that he just made up. Do we believe that is what happened?
I think he's Facebook stalking them. No, I don't know.
No, I saw it as he was tracking their digital footprint as far as like this is what they're planning on doing, and this is where they're planning on going.
Okay, well, I mean, so if we jump to the end of the movie when he spends 20 minutes explaining his motive for killing all of them or wanting to kill all of them, at one point in that scene, he says to, I believe he says it to Namdi, like, oh, at one point this weekend, I thought you guys really had changed and were going to redeem yourself. For him to say that, it leads me to believe that he was willing to spare people if they had changed and they were better people. But it doesn't make sense that he would have killed, Jay Farrow's character and Monica ahead of them even given the opportunity to prove themselves or redeem themselves. Is that because his excuse being there was that Monica invited him, but she really didn't, so he needed to like isolate her from the jump? Or does it just not make sense at all? Because I felt like they killed Jay Farrow right away just to match the trope from Scream that they bring up, like, oh, the more, also Jay Farrow, I love Jay Farrow, but he's not like an A-list actor, right? And this trope of like, oh, they kill the famous actor right away in movies
that
like
was the joke.
But like but it feels like they only do that just to match the trope of Scream, and they do it they did it in every Scream movie, or at least the ones I saw. Scream 6, I call it the Screaming, and the same thing happens there, right? So are they just doing things sometimes to match, like to make the joke, or are they doing things to actually fuel the story?
My response to that from a writing point of view would be that we don't know that he was involved in that first killing. He's hired these guys to do this. They showed up. these guys kill them, or kill Jay, and then keep her, right? So like Clifton might not, like, if Clifton was really giving them a chance, there's a little wiggle room here where he might not have made these first kills happen.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he would have instructed them not to, right? If the idea is that he's going to do a jigsaw type game where they can play their way out of it and win, then he shouldn't kill anybody from the jump.
I mean, nobody dies after this. So let me just take a second. I need to apologize to Don for something.
Oh, Jesus.
So there's this ongoing joke where Don is not late. Don is never late, but for some reason it's the thing I always pick on. And even when we did a recent panel at Phoenix Fan Fusion and we did Cards Against Humanity, I made a card that was the black guy who did not die first because he was late, like always. and I just want to point out that the people who are early fucking died, and the people who arrived on time or late survived. So Don, I apologize. I finally understand why people are late.
Wow.
That was an apology? Okay.
Sure. I finally get it.
Oh my
I'm going
God.
to continue to be early because we all know I don't want to be here. All right, go ahead.
Jesus. All right. So that first night, I mean, again, we've already gotten like way too much backstory on stuff, like backstory that could have been done in like 45 seconds, maybe a minute, or even like over the Game of Spades when they were playing it. But you get that other glimpse of Clifton is not part of the group. He doesn't really register as far as with anything but their attention. But when it comes to he's sitting and he's watching them play spades and he makes that comment like, oh, can I play? And immediately like, yeah, he said, well, I really don't know how to play. So would you teach me? And at that moment, like a massive cultural moment is put on screen, which is if you are in a black family that is playing spades, no one will ever teach you how to play spades, but you're expected to know how to play spades. The only way in which you can learn to play is by watching somebody. And then when you feel comfortable enough to sit down, you're supposed to sit down. So that whole moment that they have, and when it's the guys versus the girls, as far as the way they set up the teams, and this idea that they're going to be playing and they're going to be playing for money. And this is not the time that we're going to teach this other person. Well, this is not the time we're going to, have this moment as a group, because they could have taken a break and said, hey, all right, cool. We'll play some practice hands or whatever to get you to learn. But that step is not taken at all. So you get another moment where it's like a blackness test is taking place where he's not being welcomed in to learn the game, but he's also kind of discouraged from having anything to do with them, even when it came to watching. But I was blown away at the way, as I said before, they were able to have a discussion, able to have a conversation. They were able to do that without a conversation having to take place with many of these social and cultural issues that get brought up.
So why spades? Out of any game.
All right, I'm about to
What
ruin
is it about spades?
All right. I'm going to ruin this for everybody out there. And I
spades
feel
are black.
So anyway, there were
Because we couldn't go to the club. Yes, go ahead.
All right. So on some plantations, some slave plantations, because you're not teaching enslaved people, to be literate, how to do math or anything like that, right? There were people that passed around this game called whist or whiz or something like that. And it was a numerical game. They let them play that so they would know how to count cotton barrels or whatever product that was being done. But then it went from whist or whist or whatever it is to spades.
I love whist.
So it was something that culturally it was literally handed down. Like, here's a game to get these numbers correct, to where now it's turned into what it is culturally. But also the other question, James, because I give you the historical one, here's the cultural one. No one knows, James. No one quite knows why spades, of all things, has such a hold, like spades and Uno. So spades themselves, you do with a standard deck of cards. I mean, it's not anything special that you have to go out and buy. But between spades and Uno, those are like the two ones in every Black and Latina house. That's what you're gonna see.
And that was like legitimately, we were talking about this a couple days ago, and I kept asking you why spades, and that was my entire thing. Is it could be any game in my mind, right? Like because. I understand the communal aspect. I understand teaming together and trying to outdo somebody. I understand the safety of a place to show some aggression without any consequences because it's part of the game, and I understand all of these things. But then I was like, Uno, there was a marketing campaign at some point. There was a targeted audience. There's this specific, there's a specific product that you can buy and have in your house. And spades isn't like that at all. It's just a normal deck of cards. And so that's why I'm so fascinated with how it became this choice. And what you said about, handing it down from slavery and the counting cotton and all that stuff makes a lot of sense to me as a way to hold on to that history while still doing something completely different with it and having a different sort of power with it and still like honoring the past in a way. But yeah, that was my whole thing. I was just fascinated by how this game that's not a specifically made product, it's not commercially available, how that became the stronghold. So thank you for legitimately answering that. I know I make a lot of jokes, but this was legitimately just one of those things that I just kept thinking, why this game, So yeah.
Well, if states would allow CRT, no, I'm just kidding.
It's like the same thing in Asian culture with like mahjong, right? Like it's a game that you just culturally know, and if you don't know it, you seem like a bit of an outsider because you're kind of expected to know how to play that. We were talking before this, and I was saying that like there's a white person version. There's a WPS. There's some white people shit that would be at a party at a card game, and that card game for white people is apples to apples, because it's the same. Like when I was watching the way Clifton felt about talking, like they talked down to him about him not being able to play spades appropriately. I feel like I've done that to people who don't play apples to apples the right way. Because it's the same kind of thing where like if there's somebody there who doesn't like get it and they're not playing it the way the group is playing it, like they become just an outsider. And I can see how like alienating that can be just from something as small as playing a game of cards.
Yeah, definitely. And even as Apples to Apples grew up and became super offensive and called itself Cards Against Humanity, it's the same thing. You have to know your audience and you have to have that communal aspect of this is what these people think is funny so that I can get these points. And, I'm going to play this because it's an inside joke and I know the guy picking the winner is going to find this hilarious or that kind of stuff. And so you do get, some girlfriend who's here for the first time and like she's not making the same jokes everyone else makes, and you lose that communal aspect. So yeah, I think that's a fair comparison. But
some people can be too literal, and I think that I know you guys do a Cards Against Humanity style panel, and I'm not talking about what you guys do, but I don't particularly enjoy the game Cards Against Humanity just because it's just like let's gross each other out. Whereas Apples to Apples has a little bit of more like finesse and like I find the humor is still stupid, but a little bit deeper than just like somebody playing a card that says like, something offensive and being like, haha, that's funny. That's not something we'd normally say.
We played Cards Against Humanity once using Apples to Apples cards. So it was the questions from Cards Against Humanity. And it actually was pretty entertaining because there's something about the line between overly offensive and then not at all that was way funnier to me. But like when we do it, it's still about that, but it's also about an audience at the panels and just trying to make them, laugh their asses off and that kind of thing. I find Cards Against Humanity gets old because even with as many expansion packs and everything else, there's only so many jokes. Like, you feel like you've seen everything before. And, I don't know. I feel like something like Spades, you don't have that. Like, you can literally play it for generations, as has been proven,
Right, because the rules don't change the way that comedy would change, right?
And it just doesn't lose that effect either,
Right.
Like,
One of the other,
I've played this card everywhere,
One of the other questions I had about this particular game night is that all of these characters, they're 10 years out of college, so they're all, 22 to, or sorry, they would be 32 to 35 years old, which is
I
how
was going to
old.
say that's just because you graduated so early, but yes.
But they're the age I am. They're not the age you guys are. You guys are old as shit. But like, these are supposed to be people that
cards when we were kids.
These are people that are supposed to be my age, and like the idea of like going to a cabin to play cards and then like doing ecstasy and Molly and just like all that stuff. Like, I have never been a part of that culture, but also, do people still do that when they're in their mid-30s? It just seems like a lot. And I don't think it like aids the story. Like, the fact that they're inebriated doesn't really, aside from a couple scenes, doesn't really affect the storytelling.
I felt it would have been stronger if it was like one character that does this.
Like with the Adderall.
Yeah. But like, if I don't remember her name, but the one who gives her the Adderall, like if she was the only one who did drugs the whole time and then, gave it to this other one, like that would have been funnier to me. But everyone doing it just kind of like made me go, I don't know, I guess. But
okay, so that girl, we're introduced to that girl after the scene where they're in the car. It's the two girls and their friend. I apologize, I cannot remember any of their names. But they're talking about how Namdi is going to be at the party, and they're hiding it from the one friend because they don't want him to know, because they don't. We're to believe that this person doesn't like that person.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I did not know who Namdi was, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. So I was confused between Namdi or Naomi. And then the immediate scene after that was that woman like going to the gas station. And I was like, oh, this must be the person that they don't like, because I immediately was like, oh, I shouldn't like this person because I think that we're not supposed to. So because I didn't know who was named what, and because I was a little bit annoyed with this character from the jump, I thought this was the person that everybody hated. I mean, okay. I was obviously wrong, but I figured that out. But that was the way the scenes transitioned. I thought like, oh, I'm not supposed to like this person.
So, and then I took that whole thing as Lisa was dating. What's the guy's name, Don?
Namdi,
the driver.
No, the other one. Guy.
Oh, no, Dwayne's gay. They weren't.
Yeah,
okay,
no.
But like for me, it felt like the way they were talking without trying to tell him, it felt like he was like this guy that she was sort of fooling around with, and now she's going to get back with her ex and doesn't know how to tell him. And so it just felt really fucking weird to me.
Okay, I can see that.
You got fuck buddy vibes from that guy?
Well, I mean, like no, but yes, like it wasn't him. It was the conversation.
I thought right away they were just. I thought there was a riff from college that they were trying to like. Yeah, keep from him.
I don't get it though. I think that Dwayne and Namdi would be friends, and I don't understand it. So I get what he said his motivation is, but I'm just saying it doesn't make sense to me. But Don, what do you got going on over there?
Before I forget,
yeah,
I loved, and I'm gonna say I love for everything I say. I really appreciated the fact that Allison and I can't remember, it was Lisa initially, or it might have been Shanika. But anyway, they had a shining moment that played with so many, so many aspects and so many parts of horror history, to where you're talking about The Shining, the Shining, the film, and then you also have the Key and Peele sketches, as well as other television shows and movies where that kind of same thing is brought up, not always fully talking, but at least the communication, the nonverbal communication, just from things like moving, your eye, quarter of an inch, or positioning, things like that. It's just, it's fascinating.
I loved that until the end when the men were doing it, and then Clifton was clued into what they were like talking to each
Yeah.
other through the force with. Like,
It went scary movie for me, and
Yeah.
I hated when they did that.
but that's one of the things that like I was talking about before. Like all the like from the jump, like the tagline for this movie is "We can't all die first." All right, like I get it. Tired joke. That's a joke LL Cool J made in Deep Blue Sea. Another wonderful episode of this show that you guys should download. But in that opening scene where like they're talking about like, oh, name a black character who doesn't die first. I immediately was like LL Cool J, Deep Blue Sea. There were times where it felt like a student film of people trying to like clue in every joke. Like it turned in at certain times it turned into like a scary movie type movie, like where it's really self-referential and doesn't make sense. And it just felt like the voice kind of gets lost from beginning to end, where it could be a really effective story and also a comedy, but then they try too hard to make jokes that have really already been made.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're saying you guys hate black people in movies? Okay, all right, Fox News.
I wish I got paid like Fox News. If I had Fox News money, I'd be good to go. I could get myself a sub. Never mind. A sub sandwich. That's what I was going to say.
Oh, who wants sub sandwiches?
Who's
So
Fox?
one moment I wrote down that I wanted to mention when Namdi mentioned that he was from Oakland. The crowd around me erupted. It was like they had won the fucking Super Bowl. Like everybody was just so happy that and everybody was on Namdi's side from that moment. Like he's a local boy, we have to protect him.
That's so awesome. I'm so jealous that you got the crowd I wanted so badly. Damn it. I got to come visit more often.
You really should. Don, I feel like I'm peppering you with cultural questions, but one of the things that I was wondering about is there any cultural relevance to the crossbow, or specifically the arrows? Like, is there a reason why that's the weapon of choice, or is that just something that they decided?
I think that was horror. Like we can get you at a distance, we can get you up close, but either way, it's going to be quiet. I think that was just a killer inspired thing. And I was worried though
that it didn't kill people.
Yeah.
I love that it was a great way to have the horror and the tension and injuries and keep them alive. All right, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that. God damn it, James, made me forget. Go ahead.
So no cultural crossbow thing, huh?
Oh no, I was going to say I did get worried though when they went into the basement and the Confederate flag was sitting there. It's like when the Purge, like from season 3, so from season 3, from the third Purge election year, and then the subsequent ones, they went out of their way to be like, this guy's a Nazi, look, this guy's a Nazi. And I kind of felt like that was what they did in that scene where they're down there in the Confederate flag. I'm like, we didn't need to have that. We didn't need to have, you found like Klan robes or anything like that. But it is good for driving that additional fear, right? To kind of wonder exactly what this guy or girl, whoever it happens to be, what their end game is, and then also what is their motivation. Because as an audience member, you're immediately thinking like, oh, it's a racist asshole. Because even early in the film, they ask that question of like, what white person wants you dead? Like they immediately went to that. And they all started having their responses as to, what white person was going to be most likely to kill them.
Right. It felt like really on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. That's all I got.
It's like, James, do you agree? How do you feel on this?
I agree with anything Don says on this episode.
I support Don in everything that he ever says, with the except
about
that we've had. Yeah, we'll let the audience figure that one out. I don't want to be too on the nose about it. The ending, the very end, when they're like, oh, talking about who we can't call the cops, we'll call a fire department, and then they just get sprayed with the fire hose.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
What was that? Why? Is it just like they can't trust anybody? Is that
all right?
I imagine there is a cultural like significance to being sprayed with a fire hose.
Definitely.
It was a good one to use because you got so many layers there. So you have, the comedic effect of like, we're not going to call the police, right? So then you're tapping into police brutality. You're tapping into kind of them joking and calling in the fire department as opposed. And even the fact that Dwayne like immediately changes his clothes and no one saw him change because he changed his clothes that quickly because the firefighters were coming. So he wanted to look good. But
I love that so much.
You have, bitch, when did you change? I was like, oh, this was a gem. But the talking about the danger from one, the safety in the other, the idea of that even when they take the safe option, they're still in danger, right? But then, as I said, you're going with the comedic, but then you're also going with the one that's going to be socially conscious and aware. That's not beating you over the head to think about Birmingham in the 60s, but it definitely would be reminiscent of that, considering all the Black history and knowledge that gets thrown into this, not just cultural things, but also historical moments. And even the use of some of the imagery, like the oh my gosh, the Rosa Parks hoodie. I was trying to think of what she was actually having on, but the Rosa Parks hoodie that she wears, they even bring that in and say, would Rosa sit down? And she's like, no, wait, that's actually what she did.
That was very funny. That was a very funny joke. I like that.
That was my second favorite joke in the whole movie. But continue.
What was your first? What was your favorite?
Negroes at Applebee's cooking pasta. Yeah. I laughed so hard at that joke. That was absolutely amazing.
Out of context, that would sound like a crazy thing you're saying, but
I know that's why I kind of hesitated saying it. But yeah.
Here comes the shirt. Here comes the new sticker.
Oh my God, yes. Can you make it Necros instead? Oh, anyway.
I'll make it chili.
Couldn't resist that one. Well, now it's not going to say anything correctly. But yeah, that was the joke that killed me. What does the NAACP stand for?
Oh,
Negroes at Applebee's cooking pasta. Oh my God. Aren't you sorry you asked me now?
No, I'm not, because I forgot about that. I remember I laughed at it, but I forgot. I was like, oh my God.
I probably missed like the next 45 seconds of the movie.
What was your favorite question within the game itself, the Blackening? Did you have a favorite question in there?
The one I got from, I'm assuming he's asking me, James. The one I absolutely adored and I immediately threw up 3 fingers was the question about dark skin Aunt Viv versus light skin Aunt Viv.
I knew the answer. I was excited.
I went 3. Because that's one of those things. It doesn't have any historic relevance, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, but it has massive cultural relevance and cultural discussions that can, because I even saw that it was like on a profile as far as, quote unquote blackness, whether or not you liked light skin Aunt Viv or dark skin Aunt Viv.
We all take a moment and give our answer.
Oh no, you will. But that revealed so much.
Hey, I'm a season 1 through 3, just to be upfront. But go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say as I've seen the discussions take place, like especially like on Black Twitter, when people were like going at each other on social media about that type of stuff, and then pointing out how Friends was just the stolen version of Living Single, or the whitewash version of Living Single. But it's
that Kyle is my fucking hero. I love Kyle.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never seen.
I've tried to get him on the show. All right, continue. I'm sorry.
No, go.
No, that's all I wanted to say. I fucking love Living Single, and Kyle is my fucking hero. Right, go ahead.
I'm gonna hand it over to Thomas.
I was more of a Becker guy.
Well, no, like we skipped over that part, but like the test, right? You asked the question as far as like which one was my favorite, but just the way in which the test like goes from those jokes and knowing the words, knowing the lyrics to Lift Every Voice, which
that was so funny.
Yeah, And the thing is, like, Allison had already been ridiculed for being biracial. Like, we heard about her white dad and her black mom for,
Mm-hmm.
ad nauseum at one point, right? But the fact that all the other ones in that room are sitting there like, oh shit, like I jokingly said that to my mom and was like, oh, I said, Mom, what about the Black National Anthem? And she sat there and she sang the entire song. And I'm sitting there like, well, I'm the one who's supposed to know about more cultural stuff, but here's my mom singing every word. So the idea that the friend that they'd made fun of and kind of questioned her blackness, questioned her identity, she's the only one who knows the words to the song. And just the irony of that. But the way in which the questions themselves kept going, the presentation of this game that's being played, to they get to that part where it's about deeming the blackest, but whoever is deemed the blackest dies, right? So then it becomes, I'm going to tell you all the reasons why I'm not the blackest person here. And I think Allison said, like, oh, white dad, black mom, and I can't remember if it was Lisa or Morgan's dead. But anyway, one of the other characters, they're talking about what they had to eat, or I can't remember. Then they turn on King and they're like, he's like, oh, no, I'm not the blackest. I have a white wife. And they're like, that makes you, the idea that that's the trope that would make you're not seen as, I made this comparison earlier. You're not seen as somebody like Clarence Thomas that's forgetting or not acknowledging their identity. But when they turned it into Clifton's character, when they turned to Clifton, it was that again, he's not part of the group. He's not part of the friend group. He wasn't invited. We find that out, or at least it's understood that he invited himself as opposed to actually being legitimately invited. But what Clifton does is he starts explaining all these reasons as to why he's not black. And whether it was TV choices, music choices, but then when he's like, and I voted for Trump. And the first reaction is like, are you fucking kidding me? And then he says twice. And that's when they're all like, nah, you got to get the fuck out of here. It's like, good night, MAGA.
And then before he leaves the room, he says all lives matter, which was also...
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. I laughed so hard.
But Jay, I was thinking back to like favorite jokes. One of my other favorite jokes in the movie was that Namdi keeps referring to King's wife as the white man.
Yes.
Right.
Hilarious.
I love that. King's reaction was so good. He's like, you gotta stop calling my wife that. Oh my God. I loved it so much. It's beautiful. Also, that's what I'm gonna call my wife from now on.
The white man. She's gonna love that.
Well, it's been nice knowing you, James. Nice knowing you.
Good.
All right. Well, when they're actually finding who's doing it, or at least finds one of the killers, right? They have that packet of money, and you see there's a value assigned to each person, that we then later find out that Clifton had paid them because it was representing, what his value was to him, and going back to that night. I gotta think of the best way to ask this question. What did the two of you think about the reaction that the characters had to the money?
My own reaction was being offended by how low the amount was. But I don't know that I particularly remember their reactions. But I was pissed. I was like, that's it? My God.
I don't know that I caught that it was like a low number. But I mean, in my weird just logistical brain, I was thinking of like how much overall this was costing Clifton, right? Like he had to rig the house with all of these locks and shit. He had to make this game, get all these cameras, like hire these dudes, and like the price per person is just another cost in that. So like, really, he probably put a lot of money into this, right? Like, I don't know. That's just where my brain went. But yeah, it is an offensively low amount of money. It's like I just rewatched the movie Titanic for a lot of reasons. But one of the early scenes when Leo saves Kate Winslet from jumping into the water, and then Billy Zane is like, "Give him a 20, to thank him for his efforts." And then Kate Winslet is like, "Is that all my life is worth to you? $20?" It's the same kind of indignancy of like, how can you really put a price on killing somebody or the value of somebody's life? Like, I feel like any number would be offensive. That's just where I feel about it.
For the most part, I mean, everybody was offended by it, but my favorite reaction in that moment was not a verbal joke. It was a visual one, where I guess it's a combination because he did say something. But Dwayne, along with everybody else, is so offended at what was going on, aside from being scared. But he reads it, looks at the card, looks at the money or the envelope, sees the money, and it's like, is offended, grabs the money and puts it in his pocket.
I totally didn't see that. That's great.
I saw that right away, and I was like, I would have done the same. I think I would have done the same.
That's pretty fantastic.
But it was just so brilliantly done, where he's reading and he's like, "Oh my God!" and then the right hand just slips down and goes into his pocket.
God, that's great.
Well, the other thing, and I left this off from earlier, but the whole aspect with Carlton, right? Clifton, but when they call him Carlton, I led into this and I didn't come back to it, but that was like a really loaded insult in the 90s and the early 2000s, because, as I said, Carlton was not seen as black in some circles. So even the character he's playing is representing, as I said with the Sammy Davis Jr. thing, he's representing his own concept, his own identity of blackness. So you kind of understand, or at least understand, how the writers of this movie threw that in, right? The main group sees Clifton, or excuse me, they don't see Clifton. But when they do see him, they don't see Clifton. They see something else that they put up in their head. But the fact that using that name as part of this story, because, I mean, they could have just mispronounced his name, could have called him Cliff, and he says, "No, I go by Clifton." Or they called him Clifton, and he says, "I go by Cliff." With a character like Carlton himself from The Fresh Prince, he had to deal with it every year. You saw this going forward to eventually, when they're in college, he's at an HBCU, and I'm sorry, not an HBCU. He was going to a black fraternity, and there was one fraternity member who did not want him there because he was not his idea of a black person. So comparing that to Clifton's character, you kind of see that in his backstory when he does do the reveal. You see that in kind of the interactions that he's having with this group, that he's not good enough. And even with the designing of the game, is like, these are the black questions we're going to ask. These are the black, even when it comes to Friends, your answers, I don't watch that shit. I watch Living Single, because they spent damn near the entire 2 minutes trying to name 5 people who had been on Friends. So it's great to understand like where he probably was growing up, where he was, after he had been in prison, and trying to find some connection. And I can't remember, James, you said it, or Thomas, you said it, but you kind of did get the sense that he would have not gone through with the killings, or I mean, there were no killings other than the first 2, but he probably would have gone through.
Gator got killed. The cop got killed.
Well,
he could have pinned that on the white guys, though.
Yeah, he could have.
Like, he could have backed off at any time, and like you could have gone somewhere totally different with this. I'm glad they didn't, but like, you could have had a whole thing where he was getting the money back from their dead bodies or things like that, and just erasing his tracks, and that would have made perfect sense, and the white guys would have taken the blame. And yeah,
but yeah, it did seem like
they should get the blame. They did kill people, just to be clear, or attempted to.
It did seem like Clifton was looking to offer redemption to people if they had changed, but it seems like they didn't.
I love a good bully horror story, a bully murder mystery.
They're
No,
the only kind that there are. No.
I was going to say, you guys don't want to see the kid come back and kick the bully's ass, even though they're now both like 40 something.
So okay, the thing that really broke Clifton was that he was told that like, oh, we're revoking your black card. How
Right.
much of an insult is that? Like, would you feel like that was, if somebody said that to you, would you feel very upset?
All right. Because I think they were underage drinking, right?
No, I think it was like senior year, right? So they were like
Okay.
22 maybe.
Okay. 45-year-old me would be unfazed because I understand that there is, well, one, obviously there is no card, but then two, you can't put labels or definitions on my identity and how I express it. 30-year me maybe would understand some of the stuff. And I'd be like, oh, fuck you, whatever. You don't know, whatever. I would have a different way of expressing it. But 15 to 23-year-old me, that would be devastating. Because, and James and I have had this discussion before, there is not a discussion about the identity of Black people. So whenever you have a month like February comes along, someone will say, why is there Black History Month? Why isn't there this? It's because when we're talking about the concept of Blackness and Black identity, you're talking about it in a global sense, or you could be talking about it in a regional sense, but you're talking about it in a global sense as far as what expressions there are of race, of identity, that don't necessarily have a defined home. So you have a good number of African Americans as far as North, Central, and South that have their national identity, but don't have their national origin connection. So if you're looking at a group that they can't identify the home, right, as far as national origin, you're always looking for that identity, and that identity is going to come from within that community, or at least within those shared histories, those shared experiences for people that look like them. So it's not the same as, if you have an Irish Heritage Month or an Italian Heritage Month, German, anything like that, because there's a defined culture that's linked with the nationality. And I think that's one of the things here is you're trying to find that home, that place that you feel welcome. And, it is what it is with Clifton.
That's fair. I wanted to ask you about just representation in this movie. No, I'm being serious.
Okay.
This is so when I left, like I mentioned, I saw the film with a very predominantly Black crowd, and when I was leaving the theater, this older Black woman turned to her daughter and said, "Oh, it was so great that we all survived." Like she was invested in the story.
Oh,
and
God,
she
I didn't
felt
think
like
about
that with the exception of, and her daughter was like, well, no, like Jay Farrow and Monica died, and like we didn't all survive. But she left feeling like she was watching herself on screen and she was a part of the group. And I wonder where this ranks for you as far as, do you feel represented in this movie, and where does a movie like this that is clearly a comedy, sit on the list of Black horror films, that whether it be very serious, like something like Get Out, or, all the way to the Blackening, like where does it rest for you overall?
God, I had to think about it. Well, to the first thing, as far as with the woman's response, I didn't even put that in my notes as far as the concept of surviving, because the tagline is we all can't die first, right? But there is that feeling like, even myself, when I saw the first preview, I was thinking like, oh, who's going to be the final girl? Who's going to be the final guy, or the final, little group? But to have them all escape with their injuries, but nothing fatal that we know of. I could understand that joy, because you see so many things represented and misrepresented in the news that might, regarding somebody who looks like you, or you've seen a good number of films where, a black character or a character of color decides they're going to sacrifice themselves for, their white friend or girlfriend or whatever, right? So I think for her, it's like, these are all characters I attached myself to, I understood, and I'm glad they lived. For me, I'm looking at a horror film, which is kind of like, damn it, they all lived, as opposed to the reaction that woman has, which is, I'm glad to see me make it, because you don't get to see too many of within her life. I don't think she probably saw too many of those stories. But as far as for me, I mean, I felt more represented after I thought about the film. So, I'm going to have to try and catch another viewing of it. But it was an issue of, there was no defined blackness, right? They had things that each one of them knew. Each one of them had an expertise in. Each one of them had use that was useful to them growing up. So by showing that it's not just one thing, you get to dispel the idea of the monolith. Like, this is how all black people are. Like, I would go into a store and the first thing the guy would do is, all right, the rap section's over here. I'm like, I came to get a movie sound. I'm a fucking nerd. Just send me to where I need to go.
Like, sir, this is a Wendy's.
Then why are you selling CDs?
Hey, McDonald's used to sell CDs, but continue.
But no, I like that it shows that there's not one defined, because even with overlap of characters, as far as like some of their character traits, there is not one duplicate, or even like the little disagreements about, somebody's blackness between people who have established what their rules are, who fits in and who doesn't. And then when they find out they don't fit in on somebody else's scale, they have a question with what they deem as being blackness. So I love that they had that discussion without having the conversation, but they were able to include a variety of black characters where you're not going to get to have that variety of black characters at once with a mainstream horror film that is predominantly white casting. You're not going to have that moment. You're going to have that one black character, or maybe two black characters that are there to fit a certain role, as opposed to presenting a wide spectrum.
As you know, I don't see color. And
get the fuck out of here.
No, what I was really going to say is taking race out of this for just a second, just for this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that they survived because they were a community and took care of each other. And it wouldn't matter to me what slasher did that. I think that's a really cool thing that you never see. Every slasher, there's somebody that sacrifices someone else in some way, or, runs away instead of helping them, or that kind of thing. And I absolutely loved the idea of them surviving because they worked together and not making a big deal out of it. Like, nobody spells that out for us. Nobody, I thought that was such a cool thing. And I don't want to see it in everyone because it would be ruined, but it was cool to see.
And it's played off well as a joke a couple of times, which is, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. I think we need to split up. And then they kind of all have that reaction like, shit, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. And then later on with Ranger B. White, he criticizes him. It's like, oh, where's everybody else? So we split up. You never split up. And he just kind of goes in this, he demonstrates how upset he is. It's like, you guys were doing well together. Like, your odds of survival are higher. Why would you split up?
I also loved when he called himself one of the good ones.
Yeah.
That was a great moment.
Well, and then his answer, right? Because we go from you go from him with that appearance, right? With when he pulls over, or I didn't pull him over. He comes to the house. But while he's talking to King and getting information from him, you kind of get like, oh, this is an asshole cop, so maybe, he might be in on it as well. And you still suspect him up until that kill takes place. but the idea that he goes from being that asshole, member of law enforcement, that guy who has power and knows it, to being the guy who says something beyond the "I'm one of the good ones," but says that comment about like, just so you know, if I were invited to the cookout, I would accept, but I would decline the invitation as far as showing up because I know no matter how much of an ally I am, I can make someone uncomfortable in that space. So it's my duty to not occupy that space that would give them peace. And I'm sitting there like, holy shit, I hope he did this all in one take, because that shows how impressive he is. Because he's kind of like, look, I appreciate it, but I'm not going to go because I don't have a role there. I shouldn't take up a seat. But just the way that they present him in two different lights, I guess in three different lights, because you have that great moment, but then you have that suspicion that he might be a killer as well. But I think they did such a well job as far as having those discussions without having the conversations out loud. The more I thought about it, the more I don't want to say groundbreaking, but the more interesting it was with what they were able to put in the film without expressly saying, hey, this is what we're talking about. Because even one other thing, and this may have been their intention, may have just been me looking at too many sources, but even the moment when what's her name? Shanika's like swimming away, and then Allison is fighting off one of the killers by the tree. Like, the imagery itself made you feel as though someone was going to swing a rope over a branch and kill her that way because of the way it's shot. Now, might not have been intentional, might just be me reading into it a little bit, but that's what I felt at that moment. So the woman you overheard when she's talking about that relief, I'm sure there are a lot of people who saw kind of those same images in their heads and had that relief when, Allison makes it out or gets away.
Wow. That didn't even occur to me, but that's terrifying.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, didn't mean to bring the show down, fellas.
Now that everything's been ruined.
Because the thing about lynching is this.
Don't start that again.
Jesus. I will say something funny that happened before the movie. When I walked up to the box office, I thought, while I'm here, I'll pre-order tickets for another movie I want to see. So I walked up to the window and I was like, "Hey man, I'd like a couple tickets to The Blackening, and I'd also like a couple tickets to Asteroid City, the new Wes Anderson movie."
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and he was like, "What?" And I just laughed. It was funny.
That's amazing.
I also got tickets for Indiana Jones while I was there too. But it's just part of life, I guess.
All right, Thomas, you know the deal. What movies should people watch if they enjoyed this film?
If you loved Clifton's performance, please watch the movie Bowfinger. I'm pretty sure we've talked about that movie on this podcast before. If you like a self-referential horror film, go watch My Name is Bruce, the Bruce Campbell romp. Not a great movie, but still an enjoyable watch. And if you're like me and you've been just glued to this Titanic submersible story, go watch The Abyss. It's another James Cameron flick about a submarine that gets stuck at the bottom of the ocean. Perhaps a movie that you and I can, or the three of us can talk about someday. If we want to do something, I would love to talk about The Abyss. And this comes out on June 26th, right?
Yeah.
If you're listening to this on June 26th, tomorrow is June 27th. Please go see the 20th anniversary of Tommy Wiseau's The Room, which is only going to be in theaters for one night. And it's a lot of fun, and you'll definitely enjoy it.
Nice. All right, double feature time and time for Don to get pissed off. I'm going with Ma. Ma would be so good with this.
Wow.
I didn't consider that movie.
Really? I thought you would. I
honestly
thought you were going to jump my ass for this one.
I honestly didn't.
I think they would flow so good with each other. I think it'd just be a really fun double feature. Yeah.
They honestly would.
All right, you're up.
Think about it. All right.
3 movies.
What's funny is you say that I struggled to find movies.
I always
so-
go for some astronomical numbers, so I thought I'd switch it up today.
All right.
All right.
So anyway, I start with Hush, scary movie, or just a scary movie series, and with that, the Scream movie series. Get Out, mentioned a couple of times. Candyman, both the original and the remake. Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. Tales from the Hood, Knock at the Cabin Door, Cabin in the Woods, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and for a lot of the same historical references, and I would have to say Spike Lee's Bamboozled.
What about Leprechaun Back to the Hood?
Well, that's if you have time. That's it. If you have time.
Time depend.
Jesus Christ! That I watched that movie last summer, and I've never been the same.
I was thinking about how I could do recommendations, and I was like, oh, I'll just recommend a bunch of other movies that have colors in the title. You know, like White Noise and The Green Mile, Deep Blue Sea,
Red balloons, pink hearts.
I was gonna say Red 1 and Red 2, or Red and Red 2, whatever it is. I don't know.
Yellow Cake. The list goes on.
That would have been really funny to see how long it took us to catch on. I would have been sitting here like, what do these have to do with anything?
You know, it's funny when you said the movie Ma, my brain thought the movie Mother, the one where they eat a baby.
Oh.
But and I was like, what the hell is he talking about? This movie would flow well into that movie. Then I realized, oh, he's talking about Ma, not Mother. So. That's why I didn't say anything when you were.
My goodness. Yeah, that would flow very differently with this.
Different kind of movie.
All right. Thomas, do you care to tell people where to find you, or would you like to skip that?
You can find me on 49 to 67 other episodes of this podcast. Please listen to Deep Blue Sea. I'm thinking about it a lot lately, and please listen to the 1 million download episode spectacular.
And please listen to Lake Placid so you understand why I'm blown away with how this episode went.
You know, I think that so when you this is something that we should have talked about in the millionth episode. I'm glad we're talking about this now. I should have asked you guys if you could tell people 3 episodes they have to listen to of your show, what would they be? And I feel like one of them needs to be Lake Placid, just because we fucking reference it every time I'm on the show.
Right.
That's true. I wouldn't normally say that, but when you put it that way, yeah.
But I'm curious. I don't want to derail the end of this episode because I'm sure people are tired of hearing us. But what are the 3 episodes that you would recommend to people to just
my honest answer, and this is not a shot at any other guests or anything like that. It's not about that. So I'm going to do this in categories. If you want utterly ridiculously fun and just 3 people hanging out, enjoying the hell out of each other, I'm going to go for a tie on this one with Cocaine Bear and Silent Hill. Okay. Now, if you want what I envisioned when I said I wanted to do a podcast about social commentary in horror films, Jaws. Jonathan Jans put on a fucking masterclass with that episode. And I always have people come up to me and talk about that episode. And I can never touch what he did. It wasn't me at all. I no offense, Don, but it wasn't you. It was Jans. He just fucking amazing. Really showing how social commentary hits everything. Now, if you go with the episode I've listened to the most, like I'm having a shitty day and I just throw on this episode. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Treehouse of Horror, the fart episode.
Is that what was
because
that
I just
24?
enjoy 24, because I enjoy how fucking pissed off I was. and when I go listen to it, it makes me like just laugh at myself super hard.
Inconsolable.
And like any bad day I'm having becomes funny when I listen to that episode. There you go. Don, what do you got?
I got nothing because you took a couple of my answers.
Just throw them out. Just which ones do you love though? Whatever.
We'll let Don think about it. I'll tell you my 3 favorite that I've been on.
Cool.
Splice, obviously, because it was the first one we did. The Joker, because James, you're not on it. I just got to talk to Don for 2 hours, and
that almost happened here.
And obviously Lake Placid, because it was the most fun I've ever had just arguing with Don.
Not my fault. You don't know what a farm is.
It's
Anyway,
not my fault. You can't see how evil Betty White is, but
look,
she's
everybody's
with-
got to have a hobby.
she's with
Everybody's gotta have
Lucifer
a-
now, and that's fine.
Oh, another category I want to throw out. If you want to see me completely vulnerable and destroyed, the hate you give. All right, Don, what do you got?
Christ, man, what the hell?
Dude, I
Oh
was
my God.
destroyed when we recorded that.
You're getting
Like, that
deep.
was
Deep
that
at
was
the end of
the-
the blackening.
that was like the most depressed I've been. Yeah.
Wow.
Although I skipped the Joker, I would have been extra depressed during that. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, this is against nobody's stuff. It's just that James mentioned a couple, so I'm like, well, let me go with some people I definitely know of, just off the top of my head and off of my computer screen. The Candyman episode with R.J. Joseph,
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Jason X. Another one, because we had a really good discussion about the backstory of the film and everything that was going on with the specific characters.
And I got to talk about the greatness of the novels and the comics,
Yeah.
which is just utterly ridiculous.
Was Jason X the one in space?
Yeah.
How can you talk about that movie seriously?
Go listen to it. You'll find out.
I'll listen to it.
Then other than that, as far as Thomas episodes, I don't think either one of you said Deep Blue Sea, but I felt like we had a good time and discussion on those.
I got one more category.
You and your categories.
Every now and then, Don and I just do episodes alone. And my favorite episode that is just the two of us is Skeleton Key. I feel like Don is on another level in that one, and everything he said was utterly amazing. And I never say nice things about him, so I wanted to take this opportunity to do so.
Are you dying?
I might be. I have to go back to the dentist. I'm convinced I will have a heart attack at the dentist, but that's a problem for another day. All right, let's.
All right,
wrap this up.
there goes the vibe.
I'd also like to hear if anybody's still listening and they have any ideas for the three of us specifically to do like a particular movie. I would love to hear what people want us to watch together.
You know, that's actually hilarious because this is your 49th time here, and letting the audience pick Thomas's 50th one is kind of fantastic. I think we should do that.
It's the Over the Hill episode. Yeah.
There you go. All right, I suppose we'll wrap this up for now. As always, I'm Thomas Brungardt.
And
And I'm Donald Guillory.
And we will see you back here next week at thenecronama.com.